Good morning, folks. Today is May 16th, 2024. I'm here with my beautiful blooming Nanking cherry. And I'm just going to take you for a quick orchard update to see where we're at, what survived the winter, and what we're looking forward to this year. Well, might as well start with this Nanking. This thing is looking beautiful. It bloomed on Mother's Day. I woke up and it was just covered in blooms. It was fantastic, looked lovely. But this one, which is the same kind of bush, Nanking cherry, this one for some reason doesn't have many blossoms coming up. But I'm not too worried as long as the few on this one can pollinate those ones. We'll be having a great cherry harvest, right, Monty? So at the start of last spring, this whole area was just lawn. So last year I put in a whole bunch of work. A bunch of you will probably remember from Instagram and TikTok the stuff that I was doing out here. There was a plum tree here. It didn't make it through the winter. Rest in peace, that plum. This here was filled with strawberries last year. You'll see it's still filled with strawberries this year, but these are different strawberries because the ones from last year died. But I planted plum trees in here last year, and those also died. So this year I've got two different kinds of asparagus planted in here. I've got Equinox asparagus from Crowns, Mary Washington asparagus from Seed, and then two different kinds of strawberries. They're actually doing really well. We'll probably have strawberries to eat within a couple weeks here. Moving on. This is a Tecumseh plum. And as you can see, there's lots of buds on this, and lots of them are starting to open up, which is good. There might not be quite as much growth as I was hoping for on this tree, but it's not technically hardy where I'm at. We're theoretically too cold for a Tecumseh plum here, so we'll see what happens. This one, however, this is an Opata cherry plum. And Opatas are hardy to zone 2 in theory. This tree is actually doing awesome. Like the amount of buds on here is crazy, so I'm excited for that one to leaf out fully and flower. This is my Pembina plum, and this little girl is pretty late to the party by the looks of things. There are leaves opening up, but hard to say if it'll survive. We'll wait and see. Pembina might not be zone 2 hardy. Now these I didn't plant last year. They were planted years previous and just neglected. I didn't plant them, my mom did. This is a sand cherry that has never fruited. And this is a wild Saskatoon berry that fruited last year, but it didn't give us a lot of fruit, and the fruit that it gave us wasn't very good. I mulched it, I fertilized it, we'll see if that makes a difference. Oak tree, our one token big tree that's not that big. This Juliet cherry tree is amazing. These are my favorite cherries that we grow for sure. So I'm hoping the leaves open up on that within a couple of days here. These things have beautiful leaves and beautiful flowers. So these two Saskatoons, I just planted those this year. They are domestic varieties. Most of what we've got here on the farm are wild varieties, so I'm hoping that these give bigger, tastier berries, but again, gotta wait and see what happens. This Norcant apple tree was the smallest tree we planted last year. I think it's still doubled in size, even though it's very small. Excited for that one. I think Norcants are my favorite kind of apple that will grow here. This black currant has done really well. It's grown a ton. This bad boy was only a couple inches tall. This came from the University of Saskatchewan fruit sale last year. It's a consort blackcurrant. This tree suffered some adversity over winter. Not sure how it happened, but you might be able to see it's missing a bunch of bark along one side of it here. Despite that, it's still leafing out, so I'm going to leave it, but I'm hoping that doesn't cause any problems in the future or allow diseases in or etc. This cranberry, this is a Bailey compact cranberry. I bought this as a mature-ish shrub last year, but we didn't get any cranberries off of it. See what happens this year. I think we're in a good spot for it. Looks like we got some flowers and leaves opening up, which will be beautiful. They tell me that these are beautiful when they're fully leafed out. There's another cranberry planted there that I don't think made the winter. Carmine jewel cherries, 1 out of 2 is thriving. There's still life on that one, but I'm not super hopeful. Dartnan cherry, looks like that one died back to the roots, but there is a tiny shoot coming up yet, so gonna leave it. These Haskaps, I planted 5 Haskaps here. There's 3 that look like they're still reasonably happy. The other 2 died. So this Autumn Delight apple tree as pretty as it is dead just at the tip. So I'll have to do a little bit of cleaning up on this, because the tip did die. But there's lots of leaves coming forth and lots of life, so I'm not too worried about it yet. And these gooseberries, which, shout out Cassidy, my sister-in-law, we transplanted these from our dugout last year near the end of the season. And even though we planted them pretty late, they came back with a vengeance. So these things are fantastic. Fruit is delicious. Spines are not. Now, I might be exposing myself as a little ignorant on this, but I didn't think that these grapes had made it. Most of these stems are dry and crusty, and I figured they'd died, but clearly they haven't, because if you look, you can see they're leafing out. Anyway, grapes coming soon. This big apple tree got a pretty solid haircut from me earlier in the spring. I took a whole bunch of this tree off just to give it a better chance of surviving and making some fruit, because there's a lot of dead growth on this. But it seems to be doing okay now. There's tons of buds and they're leafing out. This is a Battleford apple tree, so they're not exactly choice eating apples, but they make good wine or pie or cider or applesauce or whatever you have. So when it comes to choice eating apples, this is a Honeycrisp. This is probably the gold standard. But this is another one of those trees that's borderline hardy. It might survive, it might not. It looks like it did make it through the winter, and I don't see any winter kill on here. But it's pretty slow to leaf out. You can see the Battleford's already got, I'd say it's 2/3 leafed out, whereas this Honeycrisp is just getting started. These are a different variety of blackcurrant than we've got out front. These have been here for maybe 10 years, and they've shown to be a very prolific producer. So we can see on here there's already a bunch of fruit buds forming. And these are pretty early too. By the end of June we should have a couple of edible berries. These Saskatoons, oh my goodness. Just want to get a... Oh, beautiful. These Saskatoons have been here for over 20 years. They've been here since we bought the farm. And when we first moved out, they would give us delicious, like big, fat, sweet, flavorful, juicy berries, and they really fell away from that in the last 6 or so years. So this year I gave them a pretty heavy pruning. I took out a bunch of old wood and dead wood, and it seems to be paying off. Now we're just going to have to fight the birds off to make sure that we actually get some Saskatoons this year, because they are notorious for stealing them. Over here we've got a couple of chokecherries that I also cleaned up really heavily. Took off a bunch of big ones and some littler ones. I basically just tried to clean up these chokecherry bushes because they're so big. They produced so much last year and in the years previous that I figured they could probably take it. They could use some beautification. This was all overgrown here and getting a bit ugly. So as you can see, these chokecherry trees seem to be pretty happy. Tons of fruit coming on these. So this beautiful big tree is a Siberian crabapple. It makes mostly ornamental apples. They're not really good for eating or even baking or cooking with. But in line with this tree down here, I planted 6 more apples at 8-foot intervals. So when these pop up and grow, I'll be grafting to them next year. They're also Siberian crabs, but I would like more tasty fruit. Now, this isn't a garden update video, but we did a bunch of gardening and planted things in here. So be on the lookout for that. This cherry tree was saved from removal just because of the location. I think it's in a pretty nice spot, and there's another one buried somewhere in this, another cherry buried somewhere in this row of Carriganas. And the Carriganas will be removed up until that cherry tree when I can find it, and we'll have a little walkway here heading out into the back pasture. This is what I'm calling my herb garden. I will not elaborate. Hi, Pop. Come on, let's go look at the cherries, buddy. These Evans cherries did pretty well in previous years, but last year we didn't get a ton of fruit. I don't know if that was just a pollination issue, but this year, this one is mostly dead. It looks like about 2/3 of the tree has no live buds on it. There are some really happy active trunks coming up here that have grown off of suckers in previous years. So I'm not too worried about it. And this one is still happy and beautiful and full of buds and hopefully full of fruit and good work, tree. Now, that's the current update. I've also planted some non-fruit-bearing trees. I've got a couple of Siberian larches here, and I'm looking for a few humongous elm trees to put just flanking the driveway, one on either side. But that's unrelated to fruit. That's out of the scope of this video. So that's the current orchard update, I guess. I just got into this stuff a year ago, and I think I've learned a lot since then. I certainly made some choices last year I wish I would have not made, but we'll see how things go. So far, it's looking like we're going to have a good year. We've got lots of rain already, which is rare for us, and things seem to be doing well. We're in zone 2, so there's a lot of stuff that's borderline hardy, especially being that we're out in the country. There's not a whole lot of wind cover, and our farm is, I'm hesitant to say on a hill because we live in Saskatchewan, but our place is on a hill for Saskatchewan. Anyway, regardless of zone, regardless of the weather and the winters we get here, I'm excited for some delicious fruit. I've got some kiwis on order, which I know people say, you can't grow kiwis here. Apparently we can, just you wait and see. And I'm looking to pick up an apricot tree this year as well. So, tons of interesting stuff in the works. As always, thanks for tagging along, and I'll catch you in the next one.